Welcome to the GenAI podcast, where the future meets fun and tech talk trends. Get ready to dive into the world of artificial intelligence like never before. Your hosts, Dale, Alan, Greg, and Val, are about to take you on a wild ride through the AI universe. So, buckle up, tune in, and let the AI adventure begin.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 30 of the Gen AI podcast. Al, we've hit the dirty 30s.
We are mature and grown up now.
You reckon? Were you grown up when you were
No.
30?
I'm not grown up now, but I'm still
Yeah.
under 30
Yeah, you're like a fine wine.
and a very bad liar.
It's good to see you. We obviously are missing Greg. He sends his regards, but he promises to get on the next episode. He's been gallivanting around the world. And Val, I don't know what to say about that guy.
When it comes to this, if you look at the Project Chatter podcast hosts, one of them has been in every episode and one of them has been in no episodes. So you even out.
Yeah, I mean, the data analysts amongst us will find some trends.
On average, you're here half the time.
There you go. But no, we continue. Nonetheless, there has been a lot happening, as we always say on every episode, but this is the world of AI that we live in. Everything from agents to agentic, through to investments in data centers, through to stock markets going up and down, through to collaborations, through to all sorts has been happening. But the one I wanted to put on the table up front was this idea. We spoke about it a little while ago around synthetic data being used to train models. However, I read an article the other day that suggests that we've reached the limit in terms of the amount of information that models can be trained on that's available on the internet, and that synthetic data isn't cutting it anymore, not improving it at the levels we saw previously. I guess one, to your knowledge, to what you're saying, is that true? And two, if so, what does that mean?
There's a lot of panic about model collapse and diminishing returns of getting data off of the internet. I think if you specifically think about the open internet, that is probably true-ish, especially because like 90% of content on the open internet right now is generated by a model that's been trained on the content from the open internet from before. There are lots of other sources of data. Synthetic data is one of them, and I actually do think that synthetic data does a lot of good things. But the other one is data that you and I don't have access to, data that is captive to platforms. And then let's not forget that the big things that are happening in the next couple of years are probably mostly around reinforcement learning. And there it is way less about data and more about simulation environments where you basically have infinite data. So when you then think about it that way, model collapse is off the table. So I'll give you an example that's like easy to think about.
Before you go in there, what's model collapse for those that have never heard of model collapse?
So model collapse is this idea that because 90% of what appears on the internet now is generated, and models are trained on what appears on the internet, you end up in this cycle where models are being trained on what models generated, and what that means is that the next model is trying to learn what the previous model was doing, and it cannot get better than that. Right? So you have this it's a theoretical collapse, but we're forgetting all these other sources, right? So the example that I was going to give is if you think about OpenAI themselves, where sure, the beginning of pre-training is what you get off the internet, right? That's how models learn about language. However, OpenAI now has a data set that's even bigger than that, which is the entirety of prompts that have ever been written. So you can do two things in that case. One is if you can just use that for training, and you use that as a way of improving your reinforcement learning because you have turn-based conversations, which actually help with RL. But also, you can pay to refine those into even better training examples. So if I give you a transcript of a ChatGPT conversation, and I ask you, make this better as a human, you will find ways to make it better. And then you've improved something that can then be used for training. And you can do that at very large scale as well. So that's why I think model collapse is not a problem. It is true that openly available data only from the internet will have some issues, sure. But everybody, and this includes the open source labs, right? Like, so even Meta, they're doing the same types of work for creating these data sets, right? And this is one of the reasons why Llama isn't fully open source, is because it's trained on data sets that Meta created internally to make the model better. So I think it is a little bit reductionist to say that. It is something that, you know, it makes things harder and it makes things more private, but we can still do a lot better than now, and we're really still only at the beginning in terms of model capacity.
Yeah. But if we sort of play that forward and we say, okay, well, that's not a real issue at this stage, and we know that there's a lot of focus on AI agents. I think we spoke about this from the beginning already. You've brought it up around, you know, what is an AI agent, what's agentic AI, and now all of a sudden people can create their own AI agents and they know what it is.
Yeah, some people can.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. It's a very general question, this, I guess, but do AI agents have the ability to make human intuition leaps? So, what I mean by that is, I'll give you a specific example. If I'm talking to a client, right, and I'm assessing their PMO project environment, and they're using, let's say, Primavera P6, but very badly. Let's say their planner is the only one that really uses it. It's not linked to anything else. The PMs don't use it. The engineers don't use it. And you ask an AI agent from that perspective as a consultant or advisor, hey, how do I get the best use out of this tool? And maybe it's asking the wrong question, but if I was asked that question as a person, right, I'd go, stop using it. You're wasting your money. Turn off the licenses, right? Do we have the ability for AI agents to make that human intuition leap yet? Is that coming? Will it ever have it? Do you see what I mean? There's certain things where you look at it as a human being where there's non-communicated information that you go, well, actually, no, the answer isn't the one I'm being asked. This is not answering the question I'm being asked. The answer is actually something else.
So I think this is less about agent ability, and it is way more about what happens during the alignment phase of training.
Okay.
So this is something that is a problem right now, especially for OpenAI's models, where the models are too agreeable.
Right.
So, and there's so many examples about this, right? It's like, oh, I want to start a new startup that is about direct to consumer delivery of potatoes. And this is one of the examples that got used. And like, oh, that's a great idea. Let's develop it together, is the response that you get from ChatGPT. Whereas what it should be saying is like, no, that is dumb. Don't do it. But so if you take a model, and there are some available, they're slightly older open source models that have been trained deliberately without alignment, and then people realize that that's not like a good idea for different reasons. But they are way more aggressive at disagreeing. So a lot of the lads need to figure out, how do you have alignment in training, which is very, very important. You do not want, first of all, an LLM that's going to start swearing back or behaving badly or insulting people. But also, you don't want one that tells them how to build a bomb, right? Which is like, if you remove alignment, you get all those things out of an LLM. And alignment is a very, very active line of research right now, right? But like, the question is like, we went way too far in the other direction because it's a safe thing to do. It's very safe, right? Agree with what the user is saying and like always stay within the confines of what you're allowed to do and never be adventurous is the safest thing to do. Which, if you think about like how people reacted to the appearance of agents and LLMs, that is also the right decision from a business perspective. People were already alienated. If all of a sudden you have an LLM turns around and it's like, no, you're wrong. What you're saying is dumb. It's just going to alienate them even more. But now we have to like correct. So Anthropic do this very well, by the way, in terms of like, they have there's two principles, right? Harmless and helpful. And you can be harmless without being helpful, which is kind of where we pushed the balance of the scales right now. So how do you bring it more towards helpful? Because you're right? Like, if you ask that question right now, the way that you formulated it takes off the table the possibility of, don't even bother paying for the licenses and doing this. I'd say option 3, use Schedule Studio, but obviously that's, what I would say. and also probably what Barry should say. And if it does, I'm going to test it. If it doesn't, I'm going to edit some prompts. I'm going to edit some system prompts immediately. But jokes aside, like the fact that you're taking something off the table in your prompt in an implicit way, right? Because you haven't said not using it is not an option. So I think it's interesting, and like alignment takes away some of those things of an LLM being able to like tell you no, stop, whatever it is, right? And there's all these examples, like they're much darker, right, of the LLM being too sycophantic to someone, right? So like there's all these examples that I've seen a few float around with these screenshots where people are telling the LLM, "Oh, I cheated on my spouse, but it's because I felt this way." And you give a little bit of an explanation of like some made up feelings, and then the LLM is like literally like just pandering to those feelings and kind of almost justifying you for doing it rather than saying like, "No, that is bad," right?
Yeah, it's
Which is
wrong.
like in most
You're a douche.
in most cultures, most cases, like you shouldn't, right? And whereas it's just staying away from telling you, no, look, you made a mistake.
Yeah, the other one. So there's lots going on in my head, and one that I want to revisit and unpack. And I don't know if we've covered it on this podcast or not, but I've certainly spoken to others about this, and it's old. Well, it feels like an old technology now, but I don't feel like we've truly harnessed. And maybe you'll tell me you don't think this is a path forward, but I don't think we've truly harnessed the blockchain capabilities when it comes to project management. And the particular one that I am thinking about is self-executing contracts. What are your thoughts on that? Because for me, there's so much ambiguity, there's so much back and forth on contract management that if we get it right and we have everything recorded and it's public and there's specific events and payments happen, it's all transparent. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think the answer is blockchain or self-executing contracts. I really don't. And I'm sorry for all the fans of blockchain that are out there, but it just doesn't answer any of the issues because you need to, like, for self-executing contracts to work, you need to have, for one, money in escrow and give over control of that escrow to the blockchain mechanism. Ain't gonna happen. If a contractor usually pays their subcontractors super late, there's no way in hell that all of a sudden they're gonna start putting money in escrow before the thing happens. They're usually paying at T plus 90, T plus 120. They're not gonna all of a sudden pay at T minus 200, which is, going into escrow is cash that leaves their accounts, right? So that ain't gonna happen. And you need everybody to subscribe to it. It's nice to think about, but it really doesn't work in this case, right? Because you set up self-executing things when there is trust on every side, but you want transparency. Because there is no trust, right? And people call them zero trust mechanisms, but it's not actually true because getting into the mechanism is the bit where you put trust. Right? It's just moving it earlier. And I don't think there is an answer there other than be better as an industry.
So the reason I put that on the table and what's the link back to artificial intelligence is AI and a contract management AI agent a better alternative? If you had two agents, client commercial manager, contractor commercial manager, and there's a contract in the middle, would they be better? Because you said it before, the first profession that you think is at risk are lawyers. What's the equivalent in our space? Contract managers.
Yeah.
And so would an AI agent contract manager be better on either side with a contract in the middle than a blockchain equivalent of a self-executing
That
contract?
entirely depends on how good the agent is, right? It could, it couldn't.
What are your thoughts? Can we create one that's good enough? Better?
I'm pretty sure we can create one that is better in 80% of cases.
Yeah, because if you look at a lot of the root causes of many things, it's the contract on projects. Was the scope clearly defined? What are the penalties? What's the commercial incentive? All these various things.
The thing that I think is a big variable here is like I think you can get the quality of the reasoning out. You can get the information out. You can get the options out. But, and this is where it's important, right? Like there's usually a business decision in there somewhere, right? Like, do we claim for LD is different from does the contract and the situation allow us to claim for LDs? And I think an agent can go as far as actually giving you a recommendation and saying, this is what happens if you do, this is what happens if you don't, and analyze the whole scenario, not just from a legal perspective, even from a business perspective and stakeholders, and knows about everybody, but somewhere in there, and even say like, I recommend this for all these good reasons. There's still a button pushing of like, yeah, sure, let's make the claim, which needs to be resolved. Like, I guess like you get rid of most of the active contract management in that case, but you don't get rid of all of it, right?
Yeah, and I think that's so. Those of you that are listening to this for the first time, to I guess give our positions of where we are with AI and how to use it. For me, it's still very much your assistant in many instances, rather than totally taking over everything you do. We are certainly heading towards a place where we'll have AI agents that are more advanced, that can potentially do an entire job, but they're not there yet. That's my view of the world. And I think we need to use it in a responsible way. As you say, it's down to how we use the technology, which is interesting because you've spoken before about this, 1 or 0 person company. And
yeah,
I've listened to a few different podcasts where there's some AI experts that are predicting the next sort of 3 to 5 years, we aren't ready for the impact that AI is going to have on the entire world system in which we operate. Is that scaremongering, doom-mongering? Is there some truth in that sort of view of the world? What do you think?
I don't know that it's scaremongering. I think the people that are saying it truly believe it. If you're scaremongering, you don't believe it, but it is possibly catastrophizing things and maybe reading too much into potential versus what's actually going to be adopted. I think Sam Altman says something along the lines of like, I thought that the impact was going to be much higher than it actually is, because all of a sudden we've given the world something that can reason about anything with a good degree of accuracy and help with all sorts of things, and then it hasn't made that much difference, not as much as one would have thought 2 years ago. So, and that is more about like how humans control those decisions in that world and how slower we are than we think we're going to be at making change. So I think the scaremongering is a bit excessive, especially like next few years. If you go 20 years down the line, the world is going to be different, but because we will have moved, like we still control the pace of change. That doesn't stop. And that's the one thing that's like not going to go away. We control the pace of change. And if we control the pace of change, we're only going to do things that we're comfortable with doing. At least some of us are comfortable with doing. And it's not going to be that catastrophic because we're slow at accepting change.
Yeah, I mean, you could say that. However, if you look in terms of the entire existence of the world, how quickly things have changed in a relatively short space of time versus since the dinosaurs were around, humans have made quite an impact on the world. If you zoom out a bit. What I'd say though is I think it's difficult to know and predict exactly what's going to happen. We've said that before. But if you think of it from this perspective, let me put out a statement or opinion and you can tear it apart or not, or agree with it, whichever you prefer. If you think of the human workforce in an economic system, we have a demand and a supply, right? Simple economics. And human resources are finite, right? There's only a certain amount of us. Yes, populations go up and down, has been growing significantly up until now, and then certain nations are seeing a bit of a decline. But there's a finite number of people in the world, and a finite number of hours. If we're now going into a world where we can create virtual people almost, or AI agents that can do stuff, does that sort of remove that ceiling and saying, actually, now we have infinite resources to do stuff? And if we take simple demand and supply, if your supply increases exponentially where there's no ceiling, then all of a sudden reduces the price point, which is the salaries we earn. So would you rather pay $1,000 a month for an AI agent to do the task, or pay someone, 45K a year with all of the headaches?
So I think there's a
taxes,
couple.
etc.?
I think there's a couple of fallacies in there, right? So one is the fallacy of infinity, because we're not going to let go of control, and because there are limitations to, right? So like I phrase it slightly differently. Like when I ask people, like if you want to think about like what can you do with the AI, think about what you could do if you had 1,000 interns, right?
Yep.
But I think like the core point here is this 1,000 is a made up number, right? But like it's n, not infinity, because you just don't get more about having infinity of that. And the price drops for that specific thing, but the job moves up, right? So let's be concrete about it, right? So like if you can have an agent that does planning
Yep.
for
That can generate a schedule for you.
for $1,000 a month, then what does that mean for planners? Well, the job role just went up. Sure, if you want to manually draw lines in P6, then the expected value of that job has gone down. But we know two things that are definitely true, because I hear people complaining about it all the time. One is there's not enough planners in the world, and B, planners need to be more strategic and do more plans for the same thing so you can choose, right? And think about options, whatever, like however you want to phrase it. But all of a sudden you can make those two things true by elevating that person that was drawing lines in P6 into that position where they're doing 1,000 plans a month for the same thing, right? And so you keep the value and the salary. You just increase the productivity 1,000-fold for the same thing.
Is a counter to that, though, the reason I have that value is because I did those low value tasks and I understand how it works. And now if a computer does it for me, I don't have that knowledge and that experience. And so therefore I can't create the value I need to be higher.
I mean, anyone who thinks that the value of a scheduler is their ability to push some buttons in P6 and set some constraints is wrong. I'm just gonna say it that way, right? I mean, I'm using this as a straw man example, and this is true of many things, by the way, right? Like I'm using scheduling because it's where we anchor some of the topic of the podcast, like all project management. But like, if we think that that's the value, then that's not it. So
Yes.
I'll use a different example, right? Like New York in the 90s, every single apartment building in New York had a elevator operator, right? You get out of your apartment, you call, you ring the bell, ding ding ding, goes down. Good morning, how you doing? Do you need anything? And like, I'm being reductive about this, but like the invention of the button got rid of that job. There's a whole story about like actually elevator operators unionized very heavily, and like there are some apartment buildings that still have elevator operators that press a button for you, right? Not part of my conversation here at all. My other point that I'm trying to make: did those people become redundant, or did they become the concierge for the building?
So I take your point. If I continue playing devil's advocate here, and I'm not a planner, but I know planners, and a planner's sitting here listening to you and going, but Alan, I'm not the same as a lift operator. I don't just push buttons. I actually understand why I'm pushing those buttons, and I understand why I'm making those links and changing those things. And the only reason I know that is because I do push those buttons and I know what I'm doing. Now, if you take that away from my career, because there is no set path of education for a project planner, it's all learned experience and handed down experience. The theory of project planning doesn't give it to you. Then I lose my end value of actually knowing why things move, why things change, and how they should be, and then looking at the contract and looking at what's happening on site and speaking to the engineers and all those various things, and then pushing the buttons and moving them around. So the only reason I have the value is because I've been in the detail and doing those low value tasks.
I'm going to turn the question around. Do you actually think that to be true? So, or are you just being devil's advocate? And the reason why I'm asking this is like, do you actually think that the act of maneuvering in P6 is what makes a planner good at those other things? Because I don't believe it is, right?
So,
like knowing how something should be built doesn't come from knowing what F9 does in P6.
No, it doesn't. But it's not as straightforward as saying it does either or it doesn't, because it's part of the bigger picture. So it's not the only thing. I'm not saying this is the key ingredient to saying this makes or breaks me as a planner. But if I take away one element of what makes me a very valuable planner and understanding scheduling on a project and bring all of this stuff together, what impact does that have in my career journey? It's like saying, for me, the way I equate it is, here's all of the ingredients and here's the recipe. By the way, this ingredient no longer exists. Do we change the dish? the outcome because that ingredient is no longer part of that recipe? Or is it healthier for us? Maybe if you're reducing salt and sugar out of that recipe, maybe it's healthier. It just doesn't taste as good.
I mean, there's also that, right? But like, I think maybe in that analogy, right? Say that you're following a recipe is you know what to do if you're missing an ingredient, right? And knowing what to do if you're missing an ingredient has nothing to do with knowing how to format the recipe on a Word document, which is kind of what we're talking about here, right? Like the act of using P6 is the act of putting something down that you already know how you should do it.
I think that's
And
the
so,
key there is if you have a planner starting out that doesn't know, how do they learn how to do it? Because you
well,
can't
that's one of
just,
the things that needs to be solved, right? Like I've complained about gatekeeping in scheduling is a big problem, right? Like there's this self-fulfilling prophecy of you can't teach planning, so we can only hire people with experience, and therefore there's not enough planners in the world. And then those planners are also saying you can't teach planning. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because, like humanity, first of all, humanity's evolution is based on the transmission of knowledge, but and I don't want to be despondent about this, like, planning is difficult, but if we can teach brain surgery, rocket science, quantum physics, and all the other difficult and complicated things, and we can teach art, right? Think about this, right? It's like, planning is an art. There are schools of art. So I don't think that argument stands up against we can't teach planning.
so just for the
Then
record,
we
I'm not
need to
saying we
figure out
can't
how
teach
to teach
planning.
planning.
Yeah. I'm
No,
not saying we
I
can't
know
teach
you're not
planning.
saying. I hear it a lot though, right? And I'm like, we certainly can figure out how to teach planning. I think no one's bothered or tried hard enough, and there are some exceptions, right? Like Michael LePage is really trying hard to figure this out, right? But like, how do you teach planning? And a lot of it is because if you're gatekeeping a profession, you also personally do better out of it, right? And so it's like you can't teach surgery and you have to do it through practice and you have to have killed a number of people through surgery and it's a badge of honor. There's something that went on until like the 1930s, 1940s, I don't know, but then we kind of got over it. And we need to find our way of getting over that barrier of like, how do you teach someone to plan, not to schedule, right? How do you teach someone to plan, which is like, go find out how to decide what things can be done at the same time, what things shouldn't be done at the same time, what things are most important for the completion, what things are not as important. And there's all sorts of other things that connect to that, right? Because like, if you think about it that way, it is the middle of project management.
Mm.
That's a very important thing. And that's the important thing that needs to be taught and needs to be used, not how to search for an activity or what's a good schema for activity codes or things like that, right? That is something that can and should be solved by automation because it's easy, low value, and actually doesn't improve the important thing. If you know how to make nice schedules, and you actually use it in your example, right? Like you could have like someone using schedules, but nobody else in the project cares about that, then you shouldn't have a planner and you shouldn't pay for P6 because you're
Mhm.
just wasting money. That's a sad outcome in a sense, but then it means that you need to fix, in a sense, like that planner was in a cubicle just writing a schedule and not talking to anyone.
Which
And
happens
it
a
goes
lot
both
more than
ways, right?
you
So like, it
think.
means like that absolutely it happens a lot more than you think. But I think that is a problem that needs to be solved, right? Like the rest of the team needs to go to the planner needs to go to the rest of the team, right? And so like, and this is something that a lot of people say, like if a planner doesn't walk around the site, how do they know what's true?
Yeah.
Right?
For
I think
for
those
our
are the
North
skills
American
that are
audience,
important.
planner, scheduler, interchangeable.
Yeah. I try not to use them interchangeably, right? But like, because I try and make a distinction, like scheduler is a P6 user, planner is someone who knows how things should be done, right? And like, I think there is a difference. We
There
use
is
the
a
terms
difference. It's
interchangeably.
100% a difference in the UK, and I'm with you there. I just know that in the US, it's
No,
scheduler,
I know.
and they mean planner when they talk scheduler.
Yeah. But like, Uh, But maybe we should all start using planner because it means a lot more, right? You are
Yeah.
making a plan. You're not writing a schedule.
Mm.
And,
Yeah.
that's the important bit. So what if you have Magic P6 and you talk to it and it does things while you're talking to it. Does that take away your job or does that make you a better planner?
Well, it depends how you use it again.
It depends on how you use it and how you identify yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I love how, though, on the GenAI podcast, we've gone deep into planning, project planning.
It was going to happen eventually, right?
It absolutely was going to happen.
Yeah. Maybe we needed the crossover with Beyond Deadlines for this, but
maybe it'd be a good one. Have a full amalgamation collab of podcasts. We can get like 3 or 4 together.
If you can get Val, you can even call it a Project Chatter collaboration.
Exactly.
If we can ever get Val to show up.
Yeah, exactly. But if you did listen to one of the Project Chatter ones, one with Lawrence on, I did bait him with the definition of variance. So listen out for that. No, you didn't. I did, yeah. and he did bite towards the end of that episode. But look, only sort of 5 odd minutes left. What else is there that you want to put on the table for this one? Because
we've got some news, right? There's like the Oracle OpenAI news, which is OpenAI gave 300
the economy, isn't it?
Yeah, I was gonna get to that. Like OpenAI gave 300 billion to Oracle. Oracle gave 300 billion to OpenAI, and then like another 100 billion appeared out of that, which is like magic. Having worked in financial markets, that's the best way to make money. You just make money appear.
Yeah, money multiplier effect.
It's fantastic. I guess the other one is like, it's UK specific, but we had a little tour of Trump coming to talk with Keir Starmer. I was at an event last night. I saw Keir Starmer and Jensen Huang on stage talk about the investments that are going to be made into the UK.
Wow.
I mean, take it all with a pinch of salt. Right? It's actually a really good event. NVIDIA organized this day where they invited the whole UK AI ecosystem.
And you are the whole UK AI ecosystem, aren't you?
No. There's a lot of companies much bigger than us, right? But it was interesting because there's a lot of good things being said, right? There's like all these announcements, like, to spend 15 billion here, 100 billion there, and all these kinds of things. I would love to see this materialize, but I have always the same question. The UK hasn't built a new power station in 5 years.
Yeah.
Where are we going to get that power from? And it's not like Hinkley Point C is going to happen any faster.
Yeah. It's going to get
imported.
And I can
say this because they're not a customer. Import it from where? France have got their own data center deals that they need to power, right?
It'll still be cheaper than trying to make it ourselves.
Look, I mean, but they're just gonna not sell it.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So data centers and AI are actually a power generation race more than anything else, and we need to put the effort in that, like generation and distribution. And don't forget that there's a lot of demand for energy right now in terms of competitive demands are a big thing, and that's a big strain on the grid as well. And I'm a big fan of SMRs. I think that like 50% of the answer is that, and the other 50% is build renewables on site, right, for the data centers. But you've got to plan and build them. You can't just show up and say like, hey, I'm going to spend 100 billion, and you put a 50 billion order in for construction of data center and power, and 50 billion in for GPUs, and then say, look, we've done 4 million GPUs, then they're now available. That takes time. And we're not ahead, right? If you make a Gantt chart, like you need build the data center, maybe simultaneously build the power, and then put the GPUs in, right? Mini Gantt chart, 3 activities. Like we haven't started these 2, which means you can't do the third one. And then at the end of that, you train models.
So what does this all mean though? Because, if there are data centers in other countries and you can access them regardless of where you are,
I think all countries have the same problem right now.
Yeah.
There's a lot, this $300 billion OpenAI deal has the same thing. Like that $500 billion OpenAI deal from 6 months ago has the same problem. Right? It's like the speed of deployment and getting to result is going to be so slow. And this is where I think it makes it then very easy to make these big promises, right? Because it's not like you have to show up with a check for that amount the following day,
Yeah.
right? So a lot of it is PR.
Yeah.
And like, if you can make $100 billion off of share price driven by PR of an announcement and a photo with 2 signatures, I mean, sign me up. I'll do it as well, right?
So that's probably a good note to end off on. I've seen 1 or 2 articles that say there might be a stock market crash, been a bull market for a while, with your former career hat on. Do you see any of that happening?
No, honestly, I don't. I don't see a bear market anytime. Mark my words. As soon as I finish this sentence, there's going to be a bear market. Because that is how it works, right? And like the biggest saying in finance is the market can stay crazy more than you can stay liquid. But I guess where I'm trying to go is even these blockers, they just make things slower, but it's not actually going to slow down adoption. It just means that, models are not going to get stupidly cheap, stupidly quick, right? Because 90% of this data center capacity is for inference, not for training, which means there's competition for demand, and they're not going to be stupidly quick, stupidly fast, and stupidly cheap.
In our
It
lifetime?
means that we'll have to, yeah, obviously in our lifetime we'll be okay, but we're going to have to wait because it's going to take 5-10 years to just deploy all that money and build the things that we said we needed to build.
And this is where you go, the 3 to 5 year time horizon you don't agree with.
Well, it's part of it, right? But also
Yeah.
the 3 to 5 year time horizon is more about the humanity's capacity for adoption of new technologies. At this point, our capacity to adopt moves slower than our capacity to develop,
That's a
which
fair
I think
point.
is a first. Maybe not. Maybe it's not a first. The times of the loom invention and the steam engine were the same. I don't know. I wasn't there.
Mobile phones?
Mobile phones, I don't think were that, right? Like we adopted as quick as it got developed.
Yeah.
iPhone came out, everyone was on it.
I think the thing that AI has, though, is we all know in hindsight, the consequences of adopting mobile phones and social media too fast was we didn't understand the consequences.
Social media for sure. Like social media has created so many distortions, right? Like
But we didn't fully
we're
appreciate
gonna
what the
post this
impact
on
would be, right?
Instagram just for the vanity, right? And then
Yeah.
someone's gonna write some nasty comment about something that I said about planners, and I'm gonna be upset, and then that's negative effect of social media.
But the last couple of big technologies, right? We look back and we go, oh shit, yeah, maybe we didn't fully appreciate what the impact would be, and so maybe that's contributed to the slow adoption rate versus.
Yeah, and well, I think AI is different for a very particular reason, right?
Well,
'Cause,
no,
like
I agree with you. I'm just
social media when it came out, everybody was like, this can only be good. This can only be good. This can only be good. Like the internet came out, this can only be good. Mobile phones came out, this can only be good, right? Because it increases connectivity. And we've got this notion that like increasing connectivity between people is necessarily monotonically good. We found out that's not true, but that's what we thought at the time. Doesn't get that treatment because it's scary.
But is
Well,
that
to
because
some people,
of
it's scary, and so that you do have that process of like thinking about it.
the aforementioned technologies? So before the mobile telephone, where we could get connected more, and social media, where we connected more, the people saying it can only be good were the people selling it. But as a result of telephones, mobile telephones, and social media, you now have more than just the people that are selling AI telling you about AI.
No, I think it was the same from that perspective. If you look at like newspapers at the very early stages of the dawn of the internet, right? They were like, "This is amazing! Imagine the future." Right? There's all these like clips from BBC programs that were like, what wasn't it? I can't remember the name of the program. There was a BBC program that was telling you like, this is what the future is going to look like, and it was all full of optimism, and this can only be great, right? And there was just general unbounded optimism. No
Yeah.
one was saying the fact that I can send my communication through an email is going to be a problem and it's going to cause issues. If anything, people then started projecting forward and like, oh, but what when computers take over, then it's scary, right? And so there's this notion of computers take over, then it's scary, which now for certain things is true. And because it's true, then people are thinking about it harder, which actually has slowed down the rate of adoption compared to adoption of mobile phones and adoption of the internet.
Fascinating thoughts, Al. Always good to, I guess, kick the tires, chew the cud, whatever. Choose whichever analogy you want to use with you.
Yeah.
It's there's a lot to ponder. And yes, I always say a lot of the time I agree with you, But I like to poke the bear sometimes and see what comes out. And hopefully we've done that for you folks. Hopefully you've got some juices flowing listening to this one. And we'll hopefully get back-to-back ones on the go just to catch up a bit. I know we've had a bit of a break.
Yeah,
but
we're taking it easy for the summer.
Yeah, taking it easy for the summer, riding out the heat waves and all of that. But we're back. So thank you so much for spending the time with us. It's been great to have you on this one. And we'll catch up with you on the next one. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.